Okay, our last section, 10-4. I know it's not a Monday, but I really like the cat here because he makes really funny faces. So, we're going to learn distance and midpoint formula. So our distance formula is this. It is simply a formula that we are going to plug numbers into and we're going to chug out an answer. So you are going to want to write this often. You are going to want to know how to work it. You do need to figure out your parentheses, then square it. Figure out your parentheses, then square it. Then add those together and then take the square root of that. So good order of operations in play here. But let's look at this first problem. So we are asked to find the distance between 1 and -2 and -3 and 1. So if you look back here, this is similar to what we used for slope, where we had x2 minus x1 and y2 minus y1. So it's a good idea to label your points x1, y1, x2, y2, because that will be helpful, okay? So once you label your points, then you can plug them in to the distance formula just fine. And then you're going to just plug out an answer. So I put my numbers in the correct spaces. So when I labeled them, 1 was my x1, so that goes there. -3 was my x2. -2 was my x1. And 1, by y1. And 1 was my y2. Those are being subtracted, so this minus and negative turns into plus plus. Okay? So, -3 minus 1 is -4. -4 squared is 16. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 3 squared is 9. So 16 plus 9 because I squared those right away. So -4 squared is 16. 3 squared is 9. I add those together to get 25, and then I take the square root of that number. So I have to do all of this math to get one single number underneath there, and then take the square root of that. So that answer is -5, and that, or not -5, +5, and so therefore the spaces between those 2 points is equal to 5 units, or 5 of those squares. If it was on an axis, it would be easier to count. Okay, so with that said, that is the distance formula. So let's talk about Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is running across town. He ran all across the United States, and we want to find out what his midpoint is. So in the movie Forrest Gump, one of his longest runs was from California to Vermont. Okay, so California to Vermont is the green line. Well, really it's this here, but we're going to look at if it was as if it was a straight line. What would our distance be? So let's pretend California on this grid is at -5, -5, and Vermont is at 3, 7. I would like you to find the distance that Forrest Gump ran if he could have run in a straight line. Okay? So your first step, what is it? Okay, so your first step was to label these x1, y1, x2, y2, and then plug in your numbers. So x2 minus y, or x1, and I'm going to make that plus plus, and then y2 minus y1. Those will also turn to plus plus. We'll give you 8 and 12, but 8 squared, which is 64, and 12 squared, which is 144. Add those together to get 208. Now, if you're asked to give the exact answer, you want to leave it under the root and just answer the root of 208, okay? If you want to get the rounded answer, and then we would need a squiggly equal sign, take your calculator, put 208 in, hit the square root button, and have 14.4. If you're using an actual calculator, you put the square root button first and then enter 208, okay? So that's the distance formula. So now let's talk a little bit about if Forrest has made this run, meaning that he ran 14.4 miles. That doesn't seem quite right with the actual mileage. But now I would like to know what's the middle of the 2 points, okay? So I'm going to look at the midpoint. So in his route, how far was it to halfway is what we're looking at, okay? Again, we have a formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So we're looking at that. Halfway between the x-coordinate, halfway between the y-coordinates, okay? So what are we going to do? We're going to use those same numbers that we used before. And we've got -5, -5. So this is our x1, y1. So my x1 and my y1. And then 3, 7, my x2 and my y2. So my 3 and my 7 go there. And then I just did the math. -5 plus 3 is -2. Divide that by 2. And you're good to go. And then you have 2 divided by 2. So you end up with the midpoint, or the middle of their run, is at -1, 1. So in between the two places, and then the middle of that. So that's midpoint. Again, it's just a plug and chug. So if you looked at the map, and we went back to the map, he would have ended up in Missouri for his midpoint. So approximately right here, and that is in Missouri. So that is all. So you're just going to apply your knowledge and find the midpoint and the distance of each of the problems. And God bless.